this is just really quick, but here comes Paul Reed Smith yet again making magical claims about Tonewood in electric guitars. For those of you who don't know, electric guitars use pickups with where a string vibrates through a magnetic field and that energy gets turned into electricity. It's pretty much the same thing as your car's alternator does, except for in that case you got something rotating around a magnetic field, or you have a iron core being in the center of a rotating magnetic field. And your car doesn't care if your hood is made out of wood or metal or plastic or what. The alternator is still going to spin and make electricity. You could say that there's a lot of factors that could influence the way the string vibrates, but in general, the string is going to vibrate in a very specific way for the most part, and anything you could really do to it is going to be pretty small. And then even then, when you actually test this stuff with a double-blinded test, nobody can pick which wood is which. There's people who've done a whole lot more work on this subject than I have, but this is one of those myths that just will not die. And like flat earthers or other people just really dug their heels in on some urban legend or just something that, already proved long ago isn't true, they are fanatical about it. And in fact, in this case, one of the writers over at Guitarist Magazine, I'm not even sure about this magazine. I don't know if I've ever seen it before, but this is supposed to be a popular magazine in England or United Kingdom. He actually called the people who don't believe in the magic pixie dust of Tonewood flat earthers. So I'll just read part of this article. I don't have access to the whole article, but I thought this part was dumb enough. This is, would you believe it? There's been a kind of trending flat earth belief in certain quarters of the internet that Tonewoods have no sonic influence and that pickups define most, if not all, of the sound of an electric guitar. We asked Paul Reed Smith for his take on that theory. Okay, well, for one thing, that wouldn't actually be a theory. That would be, a hypothesis, except for that it's true. It's just an observation at this point. If you really want to do a deep dive, there's a guy named Jim Lill, and there's tons of these videos out there, but I think Jim Lill's are the best. He just started taking parts off guitars and then pretty much ended up making a thing where he put a bridge on one table and tuners on another table and put a pickup underneath it, and it sounded the exact same as any other electric guitar that is built that way with that scale length and those pickups. And of course, the actual flat earthers out there were like, well, it's probably a wood table that was contributing to the sound, or a metal table, whatever it was. They're always gonna. It's just like when James Randi busted the dowsers, and they had to make up all kinds of stuff after the fact of why their dowsing didn't work. But let me keep going on this. So they asked Paul Reed Smith, a recent YouTube video purported to demonstrate that Tonewoods make no difference to the tone of an electric guitar. Only pickups alter the tone. What's your view? I don't think that's what the video actually said. I think where along the string, the length of the string you put your pickup, also has a huge effect on your tone. And if you really think about how strings vibrate, you can see why. Let me see if I can find a video of a vibrating string. Let's see.
Another way to look at resonance is to look at what are called modes of vibration on a string. A mode is just a frequency at which a string, like the one shown here, wants to vibrate naturally in exactly the same way as a simple harmonic oscillator wants to vibrate naturally at some frequency. What we have here
Yeah, I just want to show you when somebody actually plucks a string. So let's see if that shows.
is a string that's anchored to the table. I'll zoom. Is that we're going at if we events behaving. I've glued range, and
Oh,
I
it's going to
glued some,
vibrate a speaker.
up and down.
Interesting.
Now, speaker with an amplifier attached to an oscillator. The volume of the amplifier determines the amplitude, frequency. I did this thing up to, this is something like 10 hertz, 9 hertz or so. So 9 times per second going up and down. Or I
Okay,
could go.
here we go. So take a good look here. Right here at the end of the string, like where your string would attach to your saddle on your guitar bridge. Look how narrow the string actually crosses. Also, there's a whole thing about harmonics. We'll get into harmonics in a second. But look at how narrow that is right there. So let's say this is your bridge pickup right here. Look over here, how much wider it is. That's your neck pickup. This is why often neck pickups are made so that they're a lot quieter than bridge pickups. Let me find if I can find a picture of harmonics on a string. And you're going to see something else that you're going to want to. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can see this picture. It's kind of small. So when you're playing your guitar, there's a whole bunch of different harmonics that are going to play. And this is where I think that the Tonewood guys get into. They say that the tone of the wood, or the wood itself, is going to change the harmonic content. And you could see how that would kind of be plausible, but at a very small level. But anyway, to show you this, imagine your bridge pickup is here. Right? Once the harmonics start getting small enough or fast enough, the 7-time harmonic, whatever, you're going to see less and less of it. Or you could have constructive and destructive interference. So like right here, let's say your pickup is right here on this node, you wouldn't even get it, that frequency, right? Whereas your neck pickup is going to pick up a whole different set of things over here. So where your pickup is along the string, that could make a pretty big difference. And we saw that, and we also see, of course, on the volume, okay? So again, this headline is probably a straw man. It's not just the pickups that alter the tone. It's where on the string you put your pickups. You could argue about the materials that the guitar is made out of for sustain and things like that too, but hasn't really seemed to make that much of a difference. So Paul Reed Smith, as usual, just starts going full Deepak Chopra. Says this is a complicated equation that Tonewoods are a part of. If the bridge is made of rubber and the nuts made of rubber, the Tonewoods almost make no difference. If the theory is correct, all centuries of work involving Tonewoods on guitars would have been in vain. What a lie. That's not really an argument. It's almost a fallacious argument from antiquity, isn't it? It's also an appeal to popularity. Admittedly, if the neck is thin and weak, that will have a very detrimental effect on the acoustic tone of the guitar, regardless of the Tonewoods. But to believe that how long a piece of wood rings after it is struck and how much of the sound the wood negatively absorbs doesn't matter is not thinking well. Well, here's the thing: if you really have something like an acoustic guitar where the body resonates, it is taking energy out of that string, and you are damping and absorbing it, right? That would make it sustain less. Let's see, where else did we go? I started my career stating that first and foremost, an electric guitar is an acoustic instrument first with pickups on it, and the sound of the guitar acoustically makes a huge difference. The theory has served me and our company incredibly well. Yeah, because people believe you when you spout this nonsense. But a pickup isn't a microphone. A pickup is a motor. A pickup takes mechanical energy and converts it to electrical energy. It's not a microphone. I mean, I guess that's what, in a way, that's what a microphone does. But a microphone takes air pressure and converts it into electricity. It takes the actual sound waves, the pressure that sound is causing, in order to turn into electricity. It is following and amplifying the sound that's coming off the instrument. A pickup is amplifying or is detecting the vibration of the motion through a magnetic field. It's not a microphone. It's not an ear. It's think of a pickup as more of like you have a little winder and you want it louder, you wind it faster, a little crank, and you turn it faster. That's really what a guitar and pickup system is. It's not an acoustic. And in fact, he claims that it's an acoustic, and the sound of the guitar acoustically makes a huge difference. But he's never been able to prove that. Every single time this gets tested, it's just not true. Next thing he says, a great electric guitar is harmonically rich and bright on the low strings, thick sounding on the high strings, and rings about 45 seconds. Really? Let's pull a guitar down. We pull down one with some decently high action. Hold on. I don't bother turning on the camera here, but let's see how long this lasts. 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007. Yeah. It's probably still ringing. Maybe 10 seconds of useful string energy. 45 seconds. But, again, if the Tonewood thing was true, you'd have even less sustain unless you made the guitar out of metal, which apparently you guys don't like. Okay. A very poor electric guitar is bassy on the low strings, tinny on the high strings, and rings for about 16 seconds. No pickup is going to fix that. Wrong. The pickup is responsible for the sound of the guitar. Where you put the pickup is going to change the sound a little bit, but ultimately the pickup is what's going to give you that sound. That said, the pickups are incredibly important because they have a huge effect on the tone of an electric guitar. I'm not diminishing that in any way. Yeah, because he sells pickups too, right? Okay, so this is what we want to know. This is actually a good question. What practical examples can we look to that illustrate the real role of Tonewoods in shaping the sound of electric guitars? Right? I mean, if this stuff were true, it's just like the mic preamp thing. If it were true, they would be able to demonstrate it. Every time you ask for demonstration, they run away or give some just so story. So let's see what he has to say. Wet wood doesn't ring and really dry wood does, where the resins are crystallized. Okay, wait. Wet wood doesn't ring and really dry wood, where the resins are crystallized, does. Okay. I will bet you, since I, swirl paint guitars and sometimes I can't wait to put them back together, go ahead, dunk your guitar in water. Soak it until the wood gets completely saturated with water. Put that pickup in there, and I guarantee your guitar will sound exactly the same as when it was dry. But, you're making this claim, show it. Nobody's ever been able to show it. And if this really were true, then guitars of drastically different densities would sound different electrically. You can't say on one hand, oh, we want this really soft wood to make the guitar out of because this has all this really nice tone, and then you have this other super dense wood. And you get the exact same, when they go to describe the tone, they use the same words. I mean, come on. If you're going to make claims like this, you got to show it. So here we go again. What role does the density of wood play in shaping a tone? Some makers believe all woods of a similar density should exhibit similar tonal properties regardless of species. Yes, if density was the thing that mattered, then they should sound similar if they were similar density. And this is where it really gets funny, because these guys do believe that species of wood matters. And if you ever rode a skateboard back in the day, skateboards could often be made out of maple, and were often a certain number of plies, 7 plies, 11 plies, whatever. You know as well as anybody else that that exact same wood could be insanely heavy, or it could be crazy light like balsa wood. The exact same species of wood, sometimes out of the same tree. So the species of wood can't matter in that way. They look at, all right, if you ever looked at a tree that was cut open, they call it dendrochronology. You can like tell time using the tree rings. You can see huge differences in density depending on like what the rainfall was that year. Let's see, tree ring. So let me see if I can find a picture of some tree rings. Oh yeah, here's a great example. Okay, so you're going to tell me that this chunk of wood right here is as dense as this chunk of wood right here? This one's going to be wetter, probably, but I'm betting that this, with all that rainfall, look at that, is going to be a lot denser than this chunk right here. But go ahead. Let's see. So he says, density does help in many circumstances to make the guitar acoustically more resonant, but it's not the only factor. If that was completely true, Stradivari would not have used European maple for the neck blanks. Okay, so he brought up the Stradivarius. I think by now every person out there has heard about the actual violin snobs trying to detect the Stradivarius versus the $40 and $60 guitars, and they couldn't do it, right? So I can't believe he's even using this one anymore. Because he's saying it wasn't a high density wood. This is a complicated subject that has many dimensions. That said, different species of tone woods can have similarly musical results in an instrument depending on the rest of the factors in the guitar design equation. You know, show this. You should be able to show this. So anyway, you know, about that 45-second tone thing, sustain. Let's just watch a little bit of Jim Lill's video here.
In the last video I put out, I did a bunch of tests to try to figure out which parts of the electric guitar are responsible for the tone, and people liked it. I did see some comments that had the word sustain in them, and the people who wrote these comments seemed very concerned about the thought of something affecting the guitar's sustain. I never really think about sustain, but I can see how it'd be a bummer if you wanted to play a note this long and your guitar was only capable of a note this long. So I'm as interested as you guys are in figuring
this whole thing, but he tries to figure out how long should it last. You know, how long is your longest note going to be anyway?
Every guitar plugged in rang for more than 35 seconds, and I don't think I've ever played a 35-second long note before, so it'd be a good idea to figure out how many seconds I actually need to be able to get out of a guitar. The longest note in a song that I usually play is called a diamond, which means you hit it and hold it out for a whole bar. The slowest songs that I've played are around 60 beats per minute, which means 4 seconds per bar, so I'm thinking 4 seconds is about as long a note as I'll ever need to play, especially without feedback helping. You might not think that 4 seconds is a long time, but here's what a 4-second long note sounds like in music.
Now we just discovered the origins of doom metal.
So instead of saying this guitar sustains for 35 seconds, I bet what most people are looking for is the quality of sustain in those first 4 seconds.
Here's a couple
and the best
of
way I
things
can
that
think of,
we think about. So
but
the
I'm
break
not done
angle.
yet. Even if sustain does mostly come from the amp settings and the output level of the guitar, my 4 guitars did perform differently. And there's a lot of things that I've heard people say affect sustain on an electric guitar, so I'm still interested in testing them. Break angle is how steeply the string drops off after the nut or bridge, and I've heard people say that a steeper break angle increases sustain.
This guy has the coolest workshop. He goes and like actually builds things to test all this stuff. Like he chopped up a guitar one time. It was pretty cool.
And a shallower break angle can rob your guitar of sustain. But these guitars have break angles all over the place, and come to think of it, what's the break angle of a fretted note? But I can try to test this. Let's see how shallow of a break angle is needed to start robbing sustain.
Yeah, once it's lifting off the string.
I've heard a lot of people say that saddle material affects sustain.
So this is a big one to me. Like, how much does the nut actually change on this kind of thing? The nut or the bridge material?
Because different ways of manufacturing steel produces different hardnesses, and sometimes different metals are used, like brass, which would be softer than
Because isn't Graphtec like actual graphite, and that's saddles that people are happily using?
steel, or sometimes it's one metal plated with another kind of metal. So before I go out and buy all 30-something different types of saddle alloy, I'm just gonna shoot for the limits and say that any metal saddle versus any other metal saddle is gonna make less of a difference than this metal saddle and this wooden dowel.
Yeah.
What about string tension? I can tune a guitar down a whole step to make the strings looser, and then tune it up a whole step to make the strings tighter.
Interesting that the was it the metal losing more than the wood? Would that be because it's more of it's getting transferred to the body? Interesting. Yeah, I wonder. Kind of interesting.
When I was a kid, one of my
Yeah, see string tension as well, right? Magnetic pull, right?
favorite players said in an interview that he thought that Esquires were a little more alive and sustained a little more than Telecasters because Esquires don't have a neck pickup, and that having a neck pickup means the magnetic field sucks the strings down and doesn't let them ring as freely. So I took this neck pickup with a bar magnet on the bottom, got that magnet as close to the strings as possible without touching, and strummed 8 times. Then I removed the pickup and strummed 8 more times. My last video had an air guitar where I anchored the bridge into a bench and the headstock into a shelf propped up on chairs with motorcycle engines holding it down and 2x4s for bracing. A couple people seem to think that the mass of the bench and the shelf and even the engines act as the body and the neck of the guitar, and that is what's giving the guitar sustain. Okay. So if being physically pressed against large pieces of plywood covered in motor oil can increase sustain, then maybe it's possible that putting a guitar on top of a soft mattress that does not resonate versus a guitar being pressed against a heavy hardwood dresser that does resonate would make a difference.
Is your shoes damping the guitar, right? Could be. Who knows?
Finally, the finish. It's sometimes talked about as the make or break factor in a guitar's sustain, but I don't know anything about it, so I'll
These guys shredded the guitar.
This is tight bond wood glue. It is the most non-musical substance I can think of. It's gooey and dries plasticky. I cannot picture this material successfully transmitting or reflecting vibrations as effectively as any wood or any finish on any guitar. I picture vibrations running into it and getting absorbed into a black hole of dead tone. So I'm hoping that this test shows the maximum amount that the finish can affect an electric guitar's sustain and tone. So where does sustain come from in an electric guitar then? I've tested a bunch of things that I've been told affect sustain, and a lot of them only have a few dB difference, and the strongest evidence I have has to do with the amp. But there have to be some things about the guitar itself that make a substantial difference that anyone can hear and explains why people think that some guitars have good sustain and others don't, right?
Anyway, I thought just one more chance to clown on Paul Reed Smith, and one more chance to push Jim Lill's stuff because he is awesome. If you get a chance, watch his video about what is it called? Where does tone come from on an electric guitar? Yeah, where does tone come from on a guitar? This one's great, but you know, if you like playing Paul Reed Smiths, that's awesome. I've played some that felt like great guitars, but his science claims are iffy at best. But